Good evening. In this video, we're going to talk about dwarf planets. Dwarf planets are the minority in the solar system, and by that I mean that compared to the regular planets, dwarf planets are a subsection of planetary bodies. Now, in order to be a true planet, you need to have three checkboxes to go through. You need to be a sphere, you need to orbit the sun, you need to clear out your area around you from debris. Now, dwarf planets are round bodies, they orbit the sun, but they didn't clear up their orbits from orbital debris. So they fail to be true planets, and yet they are still called dwarf planets. Now, we know about no more than 9 or so dwarf planets. Between 6 to 9 dwarf planets that we know of, but there could be hundreds of them in the outskirts of the solar system. Now, the most famous member of the dwarf planet family, if you will, is Pluto. Now, Pluto, of course, is a very interesting body by itself. We talked about it in a previous video. But there are other interesting bodies as well that are the same as him. For example, you have Eris. Eris is a dwarf planet that basically is like Pluto, but in complete darkness in a way. It doesn't really have the temporary atmosphere that you see on Pluto during its super summer phase. Eris always in a winter state, so its surface is very reflective, which means it's shiny and reflects 90+% of any light that hits it. Or Makemake, which is basically a dwarf planet that is in potato shape, and it's one of the fastest rotating bodies in the solar system. It even has 2 moons. Or Sedna, which is a very far dwarf planet that we just cannot explain its orbit or how it got to that orbit, for example. So dwarf planets are a very diverse family of bodies. Now, at the end of it all, of course, some dwarf planets have moons, like Pluto, which has 5, but most of them has 1, 2, or just none of that. Now, the most interesting member, or at least one of the most fascinating and complex members of that family, is Ceres. Now, Ceres is a dwarf planet that is located not after the Kuiper belt, but actually in the asteroid belt. And we don't know how it got there, but its composition shows that it basically came from the outer reaches of the solar system. Now, I will show it here as an example. For your own knowledge, this is Ceres. Ceres is a very small round body, no more than some hundreds of kilometers across. And it has white patches. Now, those white patches are basically salt that came from a subsurface ocean located underneath its icy layer. Now, Ceres, of course, is the closest dwarf planet we have, but as you can see, it's also the most plain of them all. Now, Pluto, of course, is the one we know about. We figured out a lot about him. We know it has dark surfaces and bright ones, and of course, his famous heart, as you can see here. We talked about him. This is Ceres. Actually, this is not Ceres. This is an image of a different body and its moon. This is the moon and this is the body taken in 2006. But this is a new dwarf planet that we found. This is Sedna. As you can see, barely visible. It's very far away from the sun. This is another dwarf planet and its satellite that, again, by Hubble we found them. Anyway, this is another one. This is Haumea and its satellite. Haumea is, if I'm not mistaken, is the pill-shaped one that we're going to show. This is Eris and its moon. This is the moon. This is Eris, of course. And this is basically the first moon discovered on Makemake, a tiny moon just above it in this image. Okay, and this is another body. I'll just unnamed subscribed object before officially naming on 5 of February 2020. And this is an example. This is the moon of Pluto, the biggest moon, of course. It's half its size. You can say it's also a kind of a dwarf planet, but this is more of a binary system than anything. Of course, this is Vesta, an asteroid that was once a dwarf planet, but it's an asteroid now. And of course, as you can see, there is a diagram that shows different objects in the solar system: comets, trans-Neptunian objects, minor planets, dwarf planets. Here it is. Haumea is the bean-shaped object here. Eris is this one. This is Pluto and his moon Charon. This is This is Makemake. And this is another dwarf planet, and you can see here Sedna and a few others. So we found, as far as we can tell, at least, according to here, about 15 or so dwarf planets. No more than that. Of course, this is not interesting about it. We're gonna go, this is the entire point. So this is an interesting subject. Now, in this video, I'm gonna talk about a few of them, just for an example to show. In this case, I will talk about Sedna a little bit, and about the bean-shaped Haumea, and a little bit about Ceres. So first I'm gonna start with Sedna. Now, we don't know a lot about Sedna because it's a very far object, but we do know its location is very far, and technically speaking, it's a long time. Dimension is about 900 plus kilometers, but it takes about 10,000 years to orbit the Sun. And if you can see, his orbit is very vast, is very big, and is also very tilted. And this is how it goes, basically. It goes between 7 billion kilometers or so to about 93 or 94. Or if we're going to say it more precisely, between 7 billion miles to 93 billion miles away from the Sun. It's a very vast orbit. Now, here it's even better visible in this case. As you can see, Sedna is here, and there is another one here, and there is a gigantic one here. But the point is, Sedna's orbit is very vast and very different. Now, we don't know how its orbit became to be as it is, because with our knowledge of the solar system, we have no idea how the gravitational influence of Neptune or other giant planet was able to actually move it from its orbit that it was, most likely, which was closer to this gigantic elliptical orbit that we see it now. Now, the main theory right now is that Sedna is actually an alien dwarf planet that was captured by the Sun and then settled into a vast elongated orbit. It's a theory because we don't know if it actually came to be, but this is the most logical answer we have right now. But we don't know a lot. This is a large dwarf planet that we just don't know if it has a moon or not. We don't know. It doesn't have a moon yet, as far as we can tell. But we do know that it's also covered in red patches on its surface of organic matter that seems to be very common on dwarf planets in general. So this was just a little bit about Sedna. Now if we're gonna go to Haumea, Haumea is a different body, of course, like we saw. You can see the picture here that shows him right here and the two moons it has. But we don't know a lot. It's a bean-shaped object. It has a radius of about 780 kilometers or so. Dimensions basically are actually pretty big, as you can see, but the radius is like this. His mass is pretty small. Of course, the density, it's not that big. But it is a bean-shaped object here. And what's funny and interesting about him is that it orbits once every 4 hours on its axis, which is the fastest body in the solar system. It has a rapid rotation, and this is going to be, it makes him elongated in appearance, which is something that is different than usual. So this is an interesting body. As you can see here, and it also has a ring of debris around it and two moons. So this is a very interesting body indeed, as you can see here in this interesting illustration of its orbit and its rings. And of course, its two moons, as you can see here, and their orbits. It's a very interesting body, and we just don't know too much about him. But we do know that his two moons are very tiny compared to him, of course. But yeah, that's about him in terms of everything else. So this is a little bit about Haumea, and this is his movement in the night sky when he discovered. And when New Horizons spacecraft took an image of it in 2007 in this case. So Humea is actually the only dwarf plant from the ones that we found that is elongated, more like a potato shape than anything. But we do know it also has some areas on it that seems to be covered in these red patches that are basically just organic matter that locate on its surface. So this is also an interesting body itself. But Ceres, on the other hand, is the more interesting body of the three that we're going to talk about. And I'm going to say it also, just going to say some important stuff. It's one of the few bodies that most likely has a subterranean ocean underneath its surface. And plus, it's also one of the few bodies that actually has more than you might even consider, because it has also a lot of salt on it. It's a very tiny body. And look at it, as I'm going to show you right now, in between Mars and Jupiter in the asteroid belt, and its orbit is also tilted, as you can see here from these red and purple lines. It's tilted a little bit compared to the orbits of Mars and Jupiter in our solar system. It orbits in the asteroid belt. Now, of course, it's a very tiny body, as you can see here, compared to the other ones. And this is its surface, of course. And here, once again, we have a very detailed surface pictures of it because of the Dawn spacecraft, which was orbiting it for a while. And here you can see Ahuna Mons, a water ice volcano that is the only one on its surface, which in the past means there must have been a lot more than that, but still a very interesting body. And here you can see the white patches of salt in its craters that came from the subsurface ocean, which is most likely located under a thick sheet of ice. And here you can even see the structure, basically. Ice, salts, hydrate minerals, and even salt-rich liquid and rock mantle, of course, as you can see the different layers. And even here in hydrogen concentrations on it in blue, which is in the upper region of it, basically. And here you can see another one. This is by Hubble Space Telescope. The Dawn spacecraft took a lot of pictures on it. And this is it. And of course, that one. Ceres is a very interesting body, and of course, we're gonna still explore it a lot more. So, I will end this video in this. Ceres is one of the most interesting bodies in the solar system, but any dwarf planet has a history to tell. It's a body that basically have some activity on some of them we just don't know because how far they are. They're still very interesting bodies in our vast family in the solar system. So this was a little bit about dwarf planets, and I even gave some examples. Hopefully you're gonna enjoy this video. I will see you again next time.